The supermarket was busy that afternoon. Shoppers pushed their carts quickly, rushing to grab their items and head home. The sound of scanners at the checkout counters, children asking for candy, and the rolling of carts filled the air. In the middle of this noise, a young woman in her work uniform stood behind her counter, helping customers with tired but polite smiles. Her shift was long, but she always tried to treat people kindly, no matter how tired she was. While scanning items, her eyes drifted toward the far aisle. An elderly man was walking slowly, his step shaky, his hand gripping a worn-out cane. His clothes were old, his shoes looked rough from years of use, and his eyes seemed uncertain as he looked at the shelves. He picked up a box, stared at it for a moment, then put it back down as if he wasn't sure if he could afford it. People walked past him without paying attention. Some looked annoyed because he was moving too slowly in the aisle. The young woman felt a pull in her heart. She couldn't just ignore him. After finishing with her customer, she walked over to the aisle. She gently asked if he needed any help. The old man looked up, surprised, as if he didn't expect anyone to notice him. His voice was soft, almost embarrassed, as he said he was just trying to get a few things, but was having trouble. He admitted he couldn't read some of the labels clearly and wasn't sure about the prices. Instead of brushing him off, she took the basket from his trembling hands and said, "Let's do it together." The man's eyes filled with relief. She walked beside him through the aisles, asking what he needed and helping him pick out items one by one. She checked prices carefully, making sure they stayed within his small budget. When they reached the counter, she noticed he was short of money. He counted coins slowly, his hands shaking, his face filled with worry that he might have to put something back. The young woman's heart ached. Without a second thought, she reached into her own pocket and quietly added the missing amount. She didn't want to embarrass him, so she slipped it in naturally as if it were nothing at all. The old man looked at her with surprise, his lips trembling as if he wanted to thank her but couldn't find the right words. She only smiled softly and said, "It's all right. Everyone needs a little help sometimes." Around them, a few customers noticed but didn't say much. Some simply shook their heads, others whispered quietly, but no one stepped forward to do the same. The young woman didn't care what anyone thought. To her, helping someone in need felt more important than anything else. As she carried the man's bag outside, she realized how light it was, only a few essentials, nothing extra. He thanked her again and again, his eyes moist with emotion. She helped him to the taxi stand and made sure he was settled before going back inside. The old man waved his hand with a shaky smile, and she felt warmth in her chest. The kind of warmth that only comes from kindness freely given. Back at the store, her manager stood at a distance, watching her return to her counter. His face looked stiff, his eyes sharp. She thought nothing of it and went back to work, her heart still filled with quiet happiness. But what she didn't know was that this small act of kindness had already changed the course of her life. At that moment, she couldn't imagine how deeply this decision would affect her future, nor how the world around her would react. To her, it was only a human thing to help someone when they couldn't help themselves. But fate has a way of surprising people. What felt like a simple moment of compassion was about to lead her into a storm she never expected. And the very job she depended on, the place where she thought she was just doing her duty, would soon turn against her in the most painful way. She had no idea that helping a helpless old man would set off a chain of events that would test her strength, her heart, and her future in ways she could not yet see. The next morning, she walked into the supermarket with her usual quiet smile. She wasn't expecting anything unusual. To her, yesterday was just another long shift, except that she had helped someone who needed a little kindness. She still remembered the old man's trembling hands and the way his eyes lit up when she treated him with respect. That memory gave her a sense of peace as she tied her apron and prepared to start her day. But something felt different. The manager was standing near the entrance, arms crossed, his expression serious. He didn't greet her or even nod. Instead, his sharp eyes followed her as she walked to her station. A small chill ran down her back, but she tried to shake it off. She thought maybe he was just in a bad mood, like many mornings when the store was crowded and supplies hadn't arrived on time. Hours passed. She helped customers, scanned groceries, and gave her usual warm service. She liked to think that her smile made people's busy day a little better. But even as she worked, she noticed the manager whispering with another supervisor, pointing in her direction. She kept her head down, telling herself not to worry. After all, what wrong had she done? Finally, in the afternoon, she was called into the small office at the back. The air inside felt heavy. She sat in the chair, her hands folded nervously. The manager sat across from her, his voice cold and formal. He said he had received complaints. He said that yesterday she had left her counter during working hours and spent too much time helping a customer. He said the store had rules, and workers were not supposed to pay from their own pockets for customers. She tried to explain. She told him the old man could barely walk, that he was confused and short of money. She told him it didn't feel right to leave him alone, struggling in the aisles. She told him she had only added a small amount because she couldn't bear to see him embarrassed. Her voice shook with emotion, but her words were simple and true. The manager didn't soften. His face remained stiff, his voice even harsher. He told her the store was not a charity, and her actions made the business look unprofessional. He said that rules must be followed, no matter the situation. Then, without hesitation, he handed her a letter. The words felt like fire in her hands. She was being terminated. Her heart sank. The room blurred for a moment, and she could barely breathe. She wanted to protest, to plead that she hadn't done anything wrong. But the manager's expression made it clear there was no room for discussion. Her years of hard work, her patience with rude customers, her countless late nights, it all meant nothing now. She was being punished for caring too much. She walked out of the office slowly, her uniform still on, but with her spirit broken. Her co-workers glanced at her curiously as she passed, but no one said a word. The buzzing noise of the supermarket felt louder, harsher, as though the world had suddenly turned against her. She removed her apron, folded it carefully, and placed it on the counter. Her hands trembled as she did so. As she stepped outside, the cool air brushed against her face, but instead of feeling refreshing, it made her shiver. She sat on a bench nearby, staring at the sky, wondering how something so small, a kind act, a bit of help could lead to losing her only job. The old man's grateful smile replayed in her mind, and for a moment it was the only thing that gave her strength. Still, reality pressed heavily on her. Rent was due soon. Bills were piling up. She had no savings to depend on. The thought of going home and telling her family she had been fired was unbearable. Tears filled her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She didn't want anyone walking past to see her cry. She whispered to herself that maybe kindness wasn't valued in this world anymore. Maybe she was foolish to care too much. But deep inside, another voice told her that what she had done was right, even if it cost her everything. She didn't regret helping that old man, not even for a second. She only regretted that society could be so cruel to those who tried to do good. That night, lying in her small room, she couldn't sleep. The ceiling above her seemed endless, and her mind replayed every moment in the manager's office. Each word cut deeper than the last. Fired, terminated, unprofessional. She had never imagined her life would turn this way for showing compassion. Little did she know. While she lay awake with tears on her pillow, someone else was also remembering that moment in the supermarket. The old man she had helped hadn't forgotten her kindness. And even though she thought her act of compassion had been wasted, destiny was already preparing to answer her in a way she could never have expected. The following days were some of the hardest she had ever faced. The supermarket, which had once been a familiar place filled with routine, was now only a memory she couldn't bear to think about. She woke up each morning feeling heavy, wondering how she would manage without that job. Her rent was due soon, and her small savings would only last for a short time. She walked through the neighborhood, searching for new work. She stepped into small shops, restaurants, and even cleaning services, asking politely if there were any vacancies. Each time, she was met with either a firm shake of the head or a request to leave her details, with no promise of a call back. She carried her simple resume in a folder, but nobody seemed interested. Some managers barely looked at her before turning her away. With every rejection, the weight on her shoulders grew heavier. At night, she sat at her table, eating small meals to save money. She tried to keep her spirits up, telling herself things would get better, but loneliness crept in. She didn't want to burden her friends or family with her problems. Whenever they asked how she was doing, she forced a smile and said she was fine. But in truth, the worry inside her was eating away at her. Meanwhile, somewhere across town, the old man she had helped couldn't stop thinking about her. The kindness she had shown him that day had touched him deeply. He replayed the moment in his mind, the way she had walked beside him, guided him, and even paid for his groceries without expecting thanks. It had been so long since anyone had treated him with such warmth. He told himself he had to find her. She had done something extraordinary for him, and he could not let her sacrifice go unnoticed. But he realized he didn't even know her name. He only knew her face, her gentle voice, and that she worked in that supermarket. The next morning, he made his way back to the store. His cane tapped lightly on the tiled floor as he entered, looking around for the young woman who had helped him. But she wasn't there. He asked one of the cashiers, describing her as best as he could. The cashier hesitated and then finally whispered that she had been fired. The old man's face fell. Fired? For helping him? That thought struck him like a blow. He pressed for more information, but the staff wouldn't say much. All he could gather was that she no longer worked there, and no one seemed to know where she had gone. He left the supermarket with a heavy heart, but also with determination burning inside him. He knew he couldn't let this end here. Back at her small apartment, the young woman sat by the window, staring at the street below. She watched people rushing by with their shopping bags, laughing, living their normal lives. She wondered if anyone else in the world ever felt like her, punished for doing the right thing. She tried to distract herself with little chores, but nothing could push away the worry of the bills piling up on the table. As days turned into a week, her hope began to dim. She considered taking any work, no matter how small, but even those opportunities seemed hard to find. Every night, she lay awake, replaying that moment in the manager's office, wondering if she had made a mistake by helping the old man. But every time her mind whispered doubt, her heart reminded her that she had done the right thing. The old man, meanwhile, began his quiet search. He asked people in the nearby neighborhood if they had seen a young woman matching her description. He visited places where young workers often went, leaving notes with shopkeepers to contact him if they saw her. Though his steps were slow and his body weak, his will was strong. He felt he owed it to her. She had given him dignity in a moment when he felt invisible. He was determined to return that kindness no matter how long it took. The young woman, unaware of his efforts, continued her silent struggle. She held on to hope only by reminding herself that life could change at any moment. Still, she never guessed that someone out there was already looking for her, someone who would soon knock on her door and change everything she thought she had lost. Her story was not over. In fact, it was only beginning. One evening, the young woman sat quietly in her small apartment. The day had been long and disappointing. She had walked from one end of the city to the other, asking about jobs, leaving her resume, and hoping someone would call back. Her feet were sore, her clothes smelled of the hot sun, and her spirit felt more tired than her body. She sat by the window with a cup of tea, staring at the empty street, wondering how much longer she could endure this. her thoughts were broken by a sudden knock at the door. At first, she hesitated. It was late, and she wasn't expecting anyone. She stood up slowly, her heart beating faster, and walked toward the door. When she opened it, she froze in surprise. Standing there was the old man from the supermarket. But he didn't look the same as before. That day in the store, he had seemed frail and worn, with clothes that spoke of struggle. Now he was dressed neatly, in a simple but elegant suit. Behind him stood a shiny car with a driver waiting patiently. The evening light reflected off the car's polished surface, making the scene feel almost unreal. The young woman's eyes widened. She didn't know what to say. For a moment, she thought she must be imagining things. But then the old man smiled gently, his eyes soft and warm, and said, "I've been looking for you." She stepped back in confusion, unsure why he was there or how he had found her. The old man continued, his voice steady. "That day in the supermarket, you showed me kindness when no one else would. You didn't care about the rules or what others thought. You cared about me. Do you know how rare that is?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had thought of him often since losing her job, but never imagined he would appear at her door. She finally whispered, "I only did what anyone should have done." The old man shook his head. "No, not anyone. People walked past me that day. They ignored me. They pretended I wasn't there. But you stopped. You treated me with dignity. You even gave your own money so I wouldn't feel ashamed." His voice trembled as he spoke, not from weakness, but from emotion. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes. She remembered how lonely she had felt after being fired, how she had wondered if kindness had any place in this world. And now here he was, reminding her that her act hadn't gone unseen. He stepped inside at her invitation, and she offered him a chair. Sitting down slowly, he explained something she had never expected to hear. He told her that he was not just a simple old man struggling in a supermarket. In truth, he was a retired businessman who had once owned several companies. He had built a successful life, but after losing his wife, he had chosen to live quietly, away from the noise of wealth. The young woman stared at him in disbelief. His calm words and the confidence in his tone left no doubt that he was telling the truth. He went on, "I wasn't testing anyone on purpose that day. I really did need help. But I also wanted to see the world for what it is. So often, people only see money. They don't see the person. But you saw me, not my weakness, not my age, not my struggles. You saw me as human." She lowered her head, overwhelmed. All this time, she had felt as if her kindness had ruined her life. But now, it seemed like it had been noticed in a way she could never have imagined. The old man looked around her small apartment. The walls were bare, the furniture simple. He could see the weight she carried. He said softly, "I know you lost your job because of me, and I cannot allow that to be the end of your story. You lost one door, but I want to open another for you." Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't fully understand what he meant, but the kindness in his voice felt like a light breaking through her darkest days. Outside, the driver waited by the car. The night was quiet, the stars beginning to shine. Inside the small apartment, however, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The young woman, who just days ago had thought her life was falling apart, now sat across from a man who held the power to change everything. She didn't know what was coming next. But her heart told her that this meeting was no accident. Fate had brought the old man back into her life, and what he was about to reveal would leave her speechless. The room was silent for a moment after the old man spoke. The young woman sat across from him, her heart racing, her eyes fixed on his calm face. She could hardly believe what she had just heard. She had thought of him as a helpless stranger, but now she realized he was someone far more than that. The old man leaned forward, resting his cane gently by the chair. His voice was steady but warm. "I didn't come here to remind you of what you lost. I came here to give back what you gave me, Hope. You see, when you helped me that day, you gave me more than groceries. You gave me dignity. And I cannot forget that." Her throat tightened as tears filled her eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. I don't understand. I didn't do anything special. I only helped." He smiled kindly. "And that's exactly why it's special. True kindness is never loud. It's quiet. It expects nothing in return. That is why it matters." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He placed it gently on the table between them. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was not money, but a letter of offer. It was an invitation to work at his company, an important position with a fair salary, far greater than anything she had earned before. Her breath caught. She stared at the paper, her mind spinning. This can't be real." The old man nodded. "It is very real. I still own shares in the company I built. I may be retired, but I can still open doors. And I want you to walk through this one. You deserve it, not because of your skills on paper, but because of your heart. A business without compassion is nothing. I want people like you, people who remember what it means to be human." Her tears spilled freely now. For days, she had felt worthless, like life had punished her for being good. And now, in a single moment, everything had changed. She covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. The old man waited patiently until she gathered herself. When she finally looked at him, her voice was soft but firm. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," he said. "By being who you are." A deep silence filled the room again. But this time, it wasn't heavy with sadness. It was warm, full of hope. She realized that losing her job at the supermarket had not been the end. It had been the beginning of something greater, something she never could have imagined. Word of what had happened spread quietly over time. Some of her former co-workers heard about her new position and were stunned. Even the manager who had fired her found out, and shame weighed heavily on him. He had punished her for her kindness, but that very kindness had lifted her to a place far beyond his reach. As weeks passed, her life began to transform. She stepped into her new job with gratitude, carrying with her the same values she had shown in the supermarket aisle. She treated every colleague with respect, every customer with care, and every challenge with patience. She never forgot the lesson she had learned, that kindness may cost you something in the moment, but it always finds its way back to you in ways you cannot predict. The old man visited her sometimes, not as a boss, but as a friend. Each time, he reminded her that humanity is built on small acts of compassion, and that the world still has a place for those who care. Looking back, she realized that what had felt like the darkest moment of her life, the day she lost her job, was actually the turning point that led her to a brighter path. She had thought she was being punished for kindness, but in truth, kindness had been her greatest strength. Her story became a quiet reminder for anyone who heard it: never regret helping someone. Never believe that kindness is wasted. Even when the world seems unfair, life has a way of returning good to those who give it. And so, the girl who once left the supermarket in tears found herself rising higher than she ever dreamed. Not because she sought reward, but because she chose compassion over convenience. That choice left everyone who heard her story utterly speechless.